The first awakening occurs between the ages of 40 and 45. When a person reaches their 40s, a deep awakening begins within them. In the first half of life, a person largely acts in accordance with societal expectations and is oriented towards external goals such as education, career, family, and social status. However, when you are over 40, a period of internal questioning arises. By the ages of 45 to 50, a person begins to become aware of the second half of their life. The awakening process experienced in the early 40s revealed some conflicts in a person's inner world, forcing them to question their life and develop a different point of view. However, this awareness alone is not enough for change. A conscious process of reassessment is necessary. This period is a critical threshold when the past is taken into account. The person boldly holds a mirror in front of themselves and defines a new direction for the future. These years are a period when a person deeply asks, who are they, and what kind of life do they want to live? Their past ideals, dreams, and goals are considered. The person asks how meaningful to them are the things they have been so enthusiastic about in their youth. Deeper thoughts develop about career, family, relationships, and the social environment. For some people, this period is like checking the correctness of previous choices and decisions. While some feel they are on the right path, others realize they are on the wrong path and feel the need for change. Perhaps they have worked at the same job for many years, but now realize that this job no longer brings them happiness. Perhaps they have realized that something is missing in their married life, or long suppressed emotions have surfaced. Now the person is inclined to make more informed choices and not just accept things as they are. This process allows the person to ask themselves what they really want. This is a period when they ask themselves why and begin to give honest answers to that question. A person who previously tried to adapt to the expectations of the external world now begins to listen to their inner voice. In Jungian psychology, this is one of the most important stages in the individuation process. A person begins to seek their inner integrity, going beyond their social roles and the identity they present to the outside world, encountering the shadows within oneself, meeting the desires, fears, and forgotten aspects that have been suppressed throughout life is an inevitable part of this period. People are no longer just chasing success and status, but want to give more meaning to their lives. Emotional fluctuations are often observed during this period. While the person confronts their past mistakes, they also try to shape their future. These internal questions can sometimes cause feelings of regret. Thoughts like, I wish I had chosen a different career. I should have traveled more. I've worked all my life and never found time for myself can occupy the mind. Another problem people often face in the reassessment process is the realization of the reality of aging. And while the body and mind are more stable in younger years, physical and mental changes become more noticeable at this age. However, this is not a regression, but a process of reaching a different level of wisdom. Now, instead of physical strength, life experience and spiritual depth come to the fore. The person realizes that things that once seemed important to them are not so valuable after all, and begins to get rid of the unnecessary. They develop fewer but more meaningful relationships, reduce their dependence on material things, and find ways to enjoy life more. During this period, some people decide to radically change their careers or lifestyle. The age range of 45 to 50 years old is an important turning point for changing one's life. These years provide a person with the opportunity to rediscover themselves and their life. Previous beliefs and habits are re-examined, unnecessary burdens are discarded, and life begins to be lived more consciously. The person begins to listen not only to what the external world offers them, but also to the needs of their inner world. The identity created in the past with great ambition and effort no longer brings the same satisfaction as it once did. A person may realize that the roles and achievements that defined them in their youth do not reflect their true self. At this moment, Jung's concept of individuation comes into play. People feel the need to break free from societal masks and reach their own essence. This awakening usually manifests as a kind of inner restlessness. That's why, as Jung said, life begins at 40 because from this age on, a person not only exists but also begins to truly live. At the age of 50, a person reaches another turning point in their life. After the awakening and subsequent reassessment process experienced in their early 40s, a person reaches the stage of establishing equilibrium. What was questioned, changed, or transformed in the past gradually begins to fall into place. These years are a period when major internal conflicts subside and a person begins to better understand who they are and what kind of life they want to live. However, this equilibrium does not arise on its own. It must be built consciously. Understanding the basic elements of equilibrium is a crucial step towards achieving it. During this period, a person's priorities change, whereas in youth and even in the early 40s, success, status, societal expectations, and material goods take center stage. Upon reaching the age of 50, the inner world, meaning, and simplicity become more important. Now, a person focuses on what they feel, not on what they have. If at a younger age achievements were seen as goals, the question now arises, do these achievements bring spiritual satisfaction? If a person previously followed only societal expectations, now is the time to create a balance in accordance with their own values. Because this age is a transition to a phase when a person does not simply exist in life, but truly lives. During this period, a person tries to establish a balance between material and spiritual satisfaction. They have spent most of their life working, perhaps raising children and fulfilling many obligations, but now, having achieved so much, they face the question, are they really happy? If in youth they were focused only on material goods, now they understand the value of more peace and opportunities for self-fulfillment. For most people, these years are a period of getting rid of the superfluous. There is a desire for simplification, both physical and mental. People want to stay away from things that tire them and cause stress and make more informed choices. Unnecessary expenses, superficial relationships, and meaningless worries give way to a simpler, more meaningful life. The process of establishing equilibrium also includes harmony between soul and body. In young ages, health issues are often not given due attention. However, when you turn 50, the signals your body sends become more obvious. If, in younger ages, people were more concerned with the breadth of their social circle, people better know who is truly valuable, what relationships nourish them, and with whom they want to spend time. There is an increasing desire to form deep and meaningful relationships instead of superficial connections. If you are married or in a long-term relationship, these years can become a time of re-evaluating the relationship. Because couples have now raised their children and have the opportunity to focus more on their individuality. Although this situation provides for renewal and deepening of some relationships, in others, it can lead to development in different directions. Although in younger ages, it may have been important for a person to be accepted and valued by society, now the person is less concerned with what others think. They are more free, more independent, make their choices more consciously, and act in accordance with their values rather than the expectations of others. In summary, the process of establishing equilibrium at the ages of 50 and 55 is a period during which a person comprehensively evaluates their past experience and creates a more stable life in the spiritual, physical, and emotional aspects. Things that once had meaning no longer evoke excitement. If a person is not satisfied with their achievements and possessions, they begin to question the reason for this. Perhaps they have reached the peak of their career, but that peak has not brought them the happiness they expected. Perhaps they feel that something is missing in the relationships they have maintained for years. This inner restlessness sometimes manifests in the form of a crisis. Success and material wealth in themselves no longer mean anything. Peace, inner satisfaction, healthy relationships, and a simple but meaningful life become more and more important. A person has largely resolved their internal conflicts, become better at understanding who they are and what they want, and has begun to manage their life more consciously. That's why, as Jung said, life really begins at 40 because from this age on, a person not only lives, but also begins to truly live their life. At the age of 55, a person enters one of the deepest and most meaningful stages of their life journey. The awakening experienced in the early 40s, the subsequent reassessment, and finally the processes of establishing equilibrium have transformed the person and allowed them to look at life with different eyes. During this period, not only life but also extracting meaning from what has been experienced comes to the fore, turning the knowledge of the past into wisdom. Now a person has learned to learn from their experience, distinguish what is truly important in life, and explore deeper dimensions of their existence. These years are a period when a person is more aware than ever before of the transience of life. If in youth time seemed endless, now the values and limitations of time are realized more clearly. However, this awareness is not a cause for concern, but rather evokes a desire to live more consciously. People better know the value of every moment and want to cleanse their life of unnecessary anxieties and meaningless worries. It is realized that many things that were done in the past are not so important after all, and this awareness gives a person greater freedom. Deepening wisdom also allows a person to radically transform their relationship with themselves and with life. While in younger ages, people are constantly trying to achieve something and get somewhere, at this age, the power of being and feeling is revealed. Instead of external factors such as success, material wealth, or social status, the search for inner peace and tranquility now comes to the fore. A person begins to perceive themselves as part of life, to understand more deeply the connections between nature, the universe, and existence. In Jungian psychology, this is one of the last stages of the self-actualization process of the personality. Now, the person puts their ego aside and begins to recognize that they are part of a larger whole. In these years, a person's life experience begins to shed light on others. Now it becomes important not only for their own development, but also for what contribution they can make to the environment. The person wants to pass on to others what they learned in their youth, their experience, and their life philosophy. That's why many people transition to the role of teacher, mentor, or guide between the ages of 55 and 60. While some raise grandchildren, others mentor young colleagues, and still others share their knowledge through writing, art, or social projects. Because wisdom lies not only in learning, but also in sharing knowledge and contributing to the development of humanity. They learn to rejoice in the little things, notice the beauty in life, and enjoy the moment. A child's laughter, a conversation with a friend, a quiet day spent in nature. Everything now becomes more meaningful and valuable. From a physical point of view, this is a period when aging becomes more noticeable. But a wise person views aging not as a loss, but as part of a natural process. The change in the body is an opportunity for the soul to change and transform. The dynamism of youth gives way to tranquility and deep understanding. The person accepts themselves as they are, accepts their shortcomings, the changes that come with aging, and everything else that life has to offer. A person may feel that their life is moving in the wrong direction and want radical change. During this period, decisions such as changing jobs, getting married or divorced, moving to another city, or acquiring new hobbies are often made. But these changes should not only concern the external world. The real transformation happens within. According to Jung, hidden and suppressed aspects of the soul come to the surface at this age, and the subconscious makes itself known more and more. Because true wisdom is not just knowledge, but also accepting and living life as it is. Perhaps the most important result of this period is the complete attainment of inner peace. The person completely frees themselves from the burden of the past, no longer experiences serious fears about the future, and learns to live in the present moment. Although there were major conflicts and doubts before, now this process is complete and has given way to deep awareness. People no longer perceive life as a battlefield, but as a journey full of discoveries and experiences. The process of deepening wisdom between the ages of 55 and 60 is a period in which a person begins to look at life from a broader perspective, assesses past experience with maturity, and begins to achieve true peace. Now, it is important not to acquire things, but to feel the existence itself. The person understands that aging is not something to be feared, but rather an opportunity to achieve spiritual maturity. As Jung said, life truly begins at 40 because from this age on, a person not only lives, but also begins to truly grasp the essence of life. By the age of 60 to 65, a person becomes a witness to all of life's vicissitudes, experiences many changes, and understands much more deeply who they are and what they want. After the ambitions of youth, the identity questions that arise in middle age, the search for equilibrium and wisdom in their 50s, this period is now a phase of true freedom and acceptance. Now, a person begins to feel peace by accepting themselves as they are and adapting to the flow of life rather than resisting it. Freedom is no longer just an external concept. It becomes a spiritual and mental freedom. The most distinctive feature of this period is the realization that life is not something to be controlled, but rather a flow to be let go. If in younger ages a person strives to shape, direct, and design life according to their desires, now they understand that this is not always possible and, in essence, not necessary. Life should be lived as it is, flowing at its natural rhythm without the need for compulsion. Realizing this brings a person great peace and tranquility. Now, worries about what others think, social expectations, or career ambitions are completely left behind. People act in accordance with their own values and feelings and do not feel the need to prove anything to anyone. Freedom means not only independence from the external world. What is really important is the discovery by a person of freedom within themselves. A mind that previously struggled with the burden of the past, mistakes and regrets now learns to accept them as they are. It is realized that everything that happens has meaning and that every experience makes the person who they are today. Instead of trying to correct the past or shape the future, a person learns to find true satisfaction and peace in the present moment. The mind experiences true freedom by freeing itself from regrets about the past and worries about the future. At this age, the concept of acceptance becomes very important. Acceptance is not capitulation or passivity. On the contrary, it means meeting the changes that life brings with maturity, understanding, and accepting them, not fighting them. Such changes as aging of the body, loss of physical strength, and the inability to perform certain actions as quickly as before are no longer seen as a deficiency. The constant rush to achieve something or get somewhere, as in youth, gives way to the ease that comes when you are who you are. People begin to perceive changes in their body not as a loss but as a natural process of life. It is important to preserve internal energy, not external. Such concepts as success and failure, victory and defeat, youth and old age no longer have sharp distinctions like black and white. When a person begins to question the values they have learned and accepted throughout their life, they become more inclined to understand who they are and what they want. This process is both liberating and painful because when the old identity dissolves, it is unclear what will replace it. If a person has adhered to certain behavioral patterns for many years, breaking those patterns can be frightening. They are all parts of a whole and are closely intertwined. During this period, the person becomes a source of wisdom. In youth, they experienced a lot, saw the difficulties of life, made many mistakes, fell many times, and got up again. However, all this has brought the personality to its current maturity. Now is the time to pass on what you have learned to others, to guide and show the way to those around you. But this guidance implies living life by your own example, rather than giving advice or directions. True wisdom is manifested more in one's perspective and attitude towards life than in words. The period of freedom and acceptance between the ages of 60 and 65 is a period in which a person begins to meet all aspects of life with maturity, accepts themselves in the world as they are, and as a result achieves true spiritual freedom. The individual no longer lives simply for life, but feels life more deeply, values every moment, and exists with a sense of completion, feeling a lack of nothing. That's why, as Jung said, life really begins at 40 because from this age on, a person not only truly exists but also learns to live freely and consciously. Spiritual and emotional wealth. By the age of 65 to 70, a person leaves behind a large part of their life, but this leaving behind is not the end, but a door. This is a process of greater fulfillment and internal satisfaction than material or external wealth. The person begins to perceive themselves not as a passenger in life, but as a being inseparable from life itself. During this period, the person develops a deep compassion for life and for themselves. They no longer blame themselves for past mistakes, are not angry at the difficulties they face, and accept what life presents rather than resisting it. Reflecting on the past is no longer a source of judgment or regret, but simply a repository of wisdom. The person realizes the value of every moment and understands that every experience is a stone that has shaped them into who they are today. This awareness creates spiritual wealth because now the person is focused on a feeling of completion and peace, not on shortcomings and regrets. In emotional terms, this period is a period of deep maturity and tolerance. While in younger ages, people experience offenses, disappointments, anger, and sadness more strongly after the age of 65, emotions are felt more balanced and consciously. People no longer attach great importance to minor problems. They understand the futility of arguments and become more reconciliatory and understanding in relationships. They know how valuable it is to spend time with loved ones, connect with friends, and share memories. Observing the cycle of nature, they understand that they are also part of this larger system. The rising and setting of the sun, the changing of the seasons, the flow of water, the sound of the wind. All these remind us that life is in a magnificent and perfect harmony. This awareness allows a person to establish a deeper spiritual connection. Life is no longer seen as just a period of life, but as a state of existence in a single flow. But behind this fear lies enormous potential, the opportunity to grasp one's true self. According to Jung, the key to happiness and peace in the second half of life is to stop the race for external success and focus on internal satisfaction. Therefore, the awakening period is a stage in which a person begins to understand their soul and establish contact with their inner voice. At this age, a person is increasingly immersed in the search for meaning, but this search is no longer generated by anxiety or need. If in youth, the search for meaning is often fueled by dissatisfaction and a feeling that something is missing, now this search becomes a process of deepening and enriching. Turning to art, literature, philosophy, Sufism, mysticism, or various cultural teachings, people begin to see life in a broader perspective. Between the ages of 65 and 70, people begin to find great meaning in the small details of everyday life. The warmth you feel while drinking a cup of tea, inhaling the aroma of a flower, communicating with a friend, listening to the laughter of a grandchild. All this is no longer superficial experiences, but part of the essence of life. People understand that these details, which they did not notice or attach importance to in the past, are, in fact, the real wealth of life. In spiritual terms, they no longer feel a lack of anything. They do not need to get from one place to another and do not need to prove anything. Life is self-sufficient. So in this period, a person reaches a state of wisdom and acceptance stretching into infinity. They know that life is temporary, but this temporality does not bring them sadness. On the contrary, it increases the value of every moment. Now, it is important not that time is passing, but the feeling of fullness of every moment. The person focuses not on what they leave behind, but on how they feel at the moment and on the beauty of every moment they live. The period of spiritual and emotional wealth between the ages of 65 and 70 is a period when a person develops a deep love, compassion, and understanding of life and themselves, as well as achieves spiritual perfection and inner peace. A person lives not to change themselves in life, but to accept and love it as it is. And that's why, as Jung said, life really begins at 40 because from this age on, a person begins to truly feel life itself. The age of 70 and later is a period when a person reaches the deepest understanding of life and integrates with their past and existence. At this age, there is no longer a need to win, achieve, or prove one's identity. The material aspects of life and worldly ambitions have completely receded into the background, giving way to a more meaningful, deeper internal journey. This period is a stage in which a person forms the legacy of their life and accepts themselves as part of a larger whole. Accounting for the past is no longer an instrument of judgment. The person has stopped considering their mistakes and the decisions they have made as shortcomings and has understood that they are obstacles that have made them who they are today. All experiences, regrets, happiness, and pain have become teachers. The person understands more deeply the meaning that each stage, each struggle, each experience through which they pass from the very beginning of their life gives them. The realization of this creates a huge feeling of completion and peace. Nothing is lost. Everything happened exactly as it should have. During this period, the person becomes most clearly aware of the transience of life, but this awareness does not bring them fear or sadness. On the contrary, the awareness that everything is temporary makes every moment even more precious. The person no longer resists the flow of time and does not try to control it because time is not just a unit of measurement. It is a process that allows one to deepen wisdom. The desire to change the past and anxiety about the future completely disappear, leaving only the pure and clear truth of the present moment. During this period, a person seeks various ways to give new meaning to their life. Interest in spiritual matters, philosophy, art, or personal development may increase. Life is no longer just about work and financial gain. Internal satisfaction, spiritual integrity, and deep relationships become more important. In the course of this process, many people return to hobbies they neglected in childhood and youth. At this age, the concept of inheritance acquires great importance. A silent smile, understanding with a glance, showing the way to those around you through the attitude towards life that you have developed. This is real guidance. Emotionally, the person is now in complete peace and tranquility. The resentments, hardships of the past, and internal conflicts are left behind. The person not only does not forgive, they no longer want to change anything from what has happened in the past because now they understand that everything has a meaning and a reason. This understanding brings them great relief and freedom. There is no need to hold on to anything. The past is just a story. The future is no longer an expectation, but a flow. During this period, people have come to terms with loneliness. Loneliness is no longer a deficiency, but an inner wealth. If for most of their life, people have felt the need to be constantly with others, now the person has learned to be content with their own existence and find peace in their inner world. Silence is no longer scary. On the contrary, it has become a place where the deepest internal journeys have taken place. As we approach the final stages of life, we increasingly begin to think about the concept of death. However, this thought is no longer something frightening or upsetting, but has become perceived as a natural part of life. The person realizes that death is not the end, but a transformation. Just as everything in nature exists in a cycle, life is not a beginning and an end, but a process of change and an endless flow. This understanding frees the person from the fear of death and grants them great inner peace. The age of 70 and older is a period of inheritance and integration. Now the person has accepted their life as it is and has reconciled with their past, their loved ones, and themselves. They no longer want to change or control anything. They focus solely on perceiving life itself as a whole. True freedom and true happiness lie in not feeling a lack of anything, but in realizing that everything is already exactly as it should be. That's why, as Carl Jung said, life really begins at 40 because from this age on, a person begins to integrate into life itself and understand the true meaning of their existence. In this video, we discussed Carl Jung's words, "Life truly begins at 40. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more content. Thank you. Someone starts writing, someone starts painting, someone spends more time in nature. Desires that have long awaited their time in a person's subconscious find an opportunity to manifest in these years. The awakening process is a transitional phase in which a person begins to form a new identity, freeing themselves from the shadows of the past. They discover a gap between the person they were before and the person they want to be, and they look for ways to close that gap. Life now becomes a journey based on inner satisfaction, not defined by external achievements. The 40s should be seen not only as a midlife crisis, but also as a period of opportunity when a person can unlock their full potential. That's why, as Jung said, real life begins at 40 because at this age, a person first shows the courage to be themselves.